With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Hey listeners, SJ here. What you're about to listen to is an excerpt from our recent 15-year anniversary celebration for Zoweh called A Night of Stories, where we shared about the origins of Zoweh, honored folks from those early years, shared about the growth of the ministry, and where we're headed in the future. It was a wonderful night filled with, as you might have guessed, great stories, and we wanted to share some of those with you. Hope you enjoy it.
Hello. Like Michael said, we're so glad you all are here. It really means a lot to us that you would take time out of your schedules and be here with us to celebrate. And it's so good to see so many of your faces after such a long time and to meet some of you for the first time. This has been really good. The early years were kind of a blur for me as I was home raising littles. And Michael has always been very generous when he talks about how we started Zoweh together. There was really not a we. I played a supportive role at home, but it was Michael. It was the vision for Zoweh that God gave Michael and that he leaned into and walked in and lived into those years. And there was so much goodness those early years when we were with Athletes in Action at Duke. We loved having the athletes in our home, and it was really fun. We called them the guys and the girls. And I'm looking at my daughter, Hannah, and we would go to their games and cheer them on, and we really loved, those were sweet years. And right around the 11-year mark, we had been at Duke for 11 years with Athletes in Action, and right around that time, we started feeling a little bit of a restlessness, Michael and I. And we really couldn't figure out why, but we just felt a little bit of what's next, but we didn't verbalize it to each other. But we were starting to feel our age, and the kids on campus were getting younger and younger and calling us yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, and I was not loving that. But our hearts just began to move away from what we had been passionate about for so long, and we just didn't know why. But I clearly remember the timeline. It was during that time when we were starting to get a little bit, wonder what's next, when Michael found a copy of Wild at Heart, read it with some friends, and many of you know the story. He found out there was a weekend in Colorado for men, a boot camp at Ransomed Heart that he and some friends went to, and it was life-changing for him. And he came back and started to share with me what he learned there, some of what he learned there, and he would read me pages from Wild at Heart and portions of his journal, and many of you have heard me share the story. And at one point he said, "And Robin, they have a women's weekend, and I would love for you to go and get your heart back." And I thought, I didn't say anything, but I thought, my heart is just fine. Thank you very much. But I did go that next year. So Michael, I think, went in 2002 with his friends. I went in 2003, and I think we have a picture of it. There's me and Sharon Lowe and some others. In 2003, many of their husbands went with Michael the year before. That was a memory when I found that. So for several years, Michael and I hauled our friends out to Colorado. I would bring my friends to Captivating every time the doors were open. Michael would bring his friends to boot camp every time the doors were open. And Ransomed Heart was very kind to us. John Eldridge and Gary Barkalow were very generous, creating more spaces for our groups as we came in. But little did we know that the foundation was being poured for the beginning of Zoweh and the relationships that were to become redemptive, our redemptive community. in these 50 to 60 men and women that we had been bringing over those past few years. So here we were, still on staff with Crew. It was our 16th year because we were at Duke for 11 years, 4 years with Athletes in Action beforehand. With basketball. Michael played basketball for those 3 or 4 years. It was July of 2005, and Michael had just graduated from seminary and got his master's in counseling. And we were in Colorado, and it was one of the summers for all Crew staff to come for a staff conference. And so there were 5,000 plus Crew staff. And we're sitting in Moby Gym, Moby Arena, kind of like the Dean Dome at Colorado State University, huge arena. Michael and I were sitting there. I remember it like it was yesterday. And the president was talking, and we were just feeling this restlessness and a little bit of a disconnect, feeling like, okay, this is where we are and where we've been for these really good 16 years, but also feeling disconnect between what we were experiencing of a larger story, and that we were the beloved of God, that there's a glory to our lives, and that our redeemed hearts are good. And in that moment, the president, in that moment when we were sitting there, says, our hearts are wicked, desperately wicked. And Michael and I looked at each other, and our eyes got big, and we just knew. We didn't say a word to each other but in that moment, but we just knew it's time. And we felt released to move from this wonderful place that had held us for 16 years and where we had raised our daughters. And it was a wonderful 16 years, but it was time to consider what is next for us. And so we were free to explore. So Zoweh was birthed in Michael's heart and mind. And we were really excited about where we were headed and really nervous about how we were going to get there and what it was really going to look like and how it was going to play out. But I remember when we were applying for our 501c3 nonprofit status, and God led us to a woman who was a third-year law student at UNC, and she was able to do the processing of the 501c3 for us for free, and it was such a gift. And what was wonderful was that in that filing, you needed officers. And Michael didn't have to go far to find 2 men who were willing to sign on the line.
Marriage may be the most sacred of all human relationships. 2 people coming together as one. There may not be anything more powerful than 2 people walking with God together. It's kind of mind-boggling, actually. And because of the power and weight of marriage in the kingdom, it should not come as any surprise that marriage is violently opposed. It's a favorite target of the enemy. We believe this is why you don't have to look very far to find a marriage that is in trouble. Assaults on marriage and challenges to marriage are everywhere. But we at Zoweh know there is a way for couples to make a comeback. Learn how to fight back, enjoy being restored, and actually thrive in the midst of day-to-day battles of life. Marriage is worth fighting for, and having the right weapons and tools, training and orientation is crucial. That's why we created the Rendezvous Project, a 12-session video series recorded live during one of our recent Rendezvous Weekend marriage conferences. Through the Rendezvous Project, we hope to empower marriages to either take a weekend away together and host your own marriage retreat, or journey together in a weekly small group, discovering your true heart, the deep and beautiful heart of your marriage, the context of the larger story your marriage is in, and how to walk intimately with God together. For more information about the Rendezvous Project, visit therendezvousproject.com.
Yeah, I remember Moby Gym, and I thought we actually said something like, this is over. Like, this has come to an end. But I do remember that release. And like Robin said, so for those years in 01, 02, 03, right in that space, we had been taking friends out to Colorado. Some of you are here that went to those boot camps. And so 2 men that when it came time to file these 501c3s, I went to my friend Jay Stott, and Keith Daniel, who are here tonight, and you're going to hear from them in just a minute, but I want to speak a little bit about that. So Athletes in Action on Duke's campus, they wanted to move Robin and I to Cincinnati to come to the national office and be coordinators for the field ministry, which we were on. And one of my friends put it this way when I was telling him, I don't know that this is for us. Back to these feelings that we were having, this restlessness we were having. And my friend in business, he said, you know what we call that in business? I think you're wrestling with the idea that you're going to be promoted to incompetency. I said, that's it. That's exactly. I said, wait a minute. Okay, that's it. Taking me out of the field and making me the national director for field ministry. And I knew what was in Ohio because I'd been there, but there was this other kind of horizon that we were looking at within what would become Zoweh. So when we didn't move the family to Cincinnati, Athletes in Action literally said, well, you can't stay there. And I tell you that story because sometimes when a door closes, a window opens or whatever that is, no, sometimes he kicks you out. If you know me, I'm a bit of a loyalist when it comes to friendships. I would have figured out a way to stay with Athletes in Action and work it out to stay at Duke. But God had another plan. And so I'm not sure I got fired, Ann, but it was close. So I turned to my friend Jay Stott, who I'd known for almost 30 years. I've known for 30 years, but at that time, yeah, we were in our 20s when we met in the Athletes in Action world. And I said, hey, you have an office in Raleigh. Would you be interested in an office in Durham? And he said, man, you are an answer to our prayers. So I joined the branch of Campus Crusade called Priority Associates, and Jay made a space for me as I and Robin were just having to figure things out, honestly. But I got to work with men. I kind of left the campus. But all that while, Keith Daniel, he and I are the chaplains for Duke football. So I got to keep a foot in there with Keith in Duke football and some of the other sports. And over here, I'm starting to move with Jay. And you know what happens when you got the boat in the dock thing. You know, it just was a matter of time before I had to move. But these two men joined us. You've signed things, federal forms, bro. You should pay more attention to what's going on. 501c3, they're coming after you first. But Keith, you've been my friend for 25 years. We have shot a lot of threes together, made a lot, missed a lot. We've played together. I love our times of catching up. If we haven't seen each other in a week or two, it's just amazing to me. And so these two guys jumped into a boat that had no paddles. You know, I was telling Blake that, and some other, that we hung on to that boat for a long time. And if you got in that boat, you were just kind of doing like this. So I want to bring up my friends Keith Daniel and Jay Stott to just tell you a couple stories of some of those early days when we were figuring things out. We're still figuring things out, but these are my friends, Jay Stott.
How much time do I have?
2 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to see those documents, by the way. I don't remember signing anything. But Keith and I were having a great time catching up, and I'm just flooded with so many memories, so many good things that we experienced. But we were joking when I looked at the impact of Zoweh, and Michael said he couldn't spell sentimental. Yeah, when we met 30 years ago, I did not envision 40,000 books coming out of this guy. It just, the immeasurably more that we talk about, it's all God, that's for sure. But I have to think back to 1989 when I met both of these guys. And Michael was chasing Robin all over Colorado State's University campus. I mean, we would go play basketball, and he'd come back and he said, man, this gal I met, she's the one. She's the one. The flame was flickering back in those days. But it's also coming to my mind where when Michael moved over from AIA and was working with us with Priority Associates, and I could see his heart coming alive, especially after Wild at Heart and us going to Colorado. And I can remember us being in this staff meeting, and it was almost like Michael was pushing himself to the whiteboard. I want to outline this, and I wish I had a picture of it. It was probably, the Two Realms, Two Kingdoms. How could I forget that? Two Realms, Two Kingdoms, that was the precursor. It was right there. And I remember sitting in that conference room thinking, wow, this is something. Because it sparked something in my heart. And then we said, Priority Associates is great, but we got to figure out a way to do more of this. And we were off to the races. And our first assignment, Keith and I were talking about it, was down at Bay Hill Country Club. And I'm thinking, okay, we're at Bay Hill Country Club. We got about, 20 guys. Is that it? Wow, look how lean that guy is. Anyway, so we're down at Bay Hill Country Club. We have a great weekend. We're testing it out, running all these test patterns. And I'm thinking, okay, Michael, this is pretty good. We're coming in alive. These guys' hearts, there's a spark there. We have great conversation. And I played 2 rounds at Bay Hill Country Club. I'm thinking, I can do this ministry. I think we'll launch from here. But then, I remember those early conferences up in Virginia. And the thing that impacted me was that very thing, those impact sheets. When we would read about how men's lives were being changed, where they were making discoveries of what God was up to, this bigger story of healing their hearts and restoring their hearts. And I haven't recovered from that. I miss speaking with Zoweh. I miss some of our ministry together. But it's interesting how God has given us new assignments to take that same core message to different environments and see more hearts come alive. So it was great to be a part from the very beginning, and it's been great to see what God has done since.
I have to put a timer on myself because I'm not sure where to begin. I look out and I think about the journey God has put me on in my life and look at these pictures, man. I'm like, so in 1992, I was 2 years out of college, graduated from Duke, and working at the Fuqua School of Business. And what I remember, Michael, about our first conversation, when you began to unpack some things on your heart, you said to me, God has laid you on my heart. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't think I've ever had another man say that to me in that kind of way. But in my head, I'm thinking, okay, where is this guy going? Is he selling something? But I really didn't know how to trust that, right? And again, we come from 2 different worlds in a lot of different ways. But Michael invited me into his story and into his life. And it's just been nothing but a joyous and adventurous ride ever since. Again, my name is Keith, my wife Lorna, 27, 28 years now, something like that. I'm in the ballpark. We got married in 93, so I'm discovering my identity and sense of place in the world, belonging. All of this stuff, Michael was stored up as a treasure in his heart, and he's unpacking it for me, and I get a front seat. And he's like, I want you to be along on this ride with me. And then he mentioned about playing basketball. That was a sport. I wanted to be a Duke basketball player, but I feel like Mitch Robbins in that movie when he melts down in front of the class. He's like, yeah, but I'm a radio announcer. So I played football, had a great football career. And Anthony Dilweg was the first to introduce me to Michael. We played together. We went to the Bible studies at the Smart Home. And that was 7 Promises of a Promise Keeper. And that was just an intense time of reckoning about manhood and character and those sorts of things. So God was pouring that foundation in me to be really assured in my own skin, if you know what that means. I had a mentor who would tell me that when you get up before groups or you just live from your authentic swing. All of these movie clips, Patch Adams was like, he looks at Mendelssohn, he's like, 4, what is that for? He said, don't live like the rest of the world lives. Fear, laziness, conformity. All of this stuff was coming out. And, my time at the business school, then going to HR and working with people in HR and seeing folks like hating their life and their job and thinking, man, but I've discovered something. If you could see this. And so Michael was crazy enough to keep picking me. It's kind of, as a kid, sometimes, you hope you get picked for certain teams. Like, I hope they think I'm good enough to get picked and you're the last one in the line. Now, when we played basketball, he would always want me to play with him. I'm like, why do you want me to always be on your team? You know I'm really not that good. I can shoot pretty well from the corner, but that's about it. He said, nah, you're going to lock in together. And we just had walked together. My wife, I entered divinity school. You said you finished in 2005. So I started in 2002, and that very semester, my wife was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And so all of a sudden, life gets just, the dark music and the intensity is just flooding in. And then I got this brother and our other brothers from the basketball group. We got our prayer circle. And next thing I know, I'm a part of a band of brothers. And then the language starts to get more intense. Like our Christian language, redemption. Oh, I know what that feels like. Reconciliation. I know what it's like to live from that place. And then I was starting to go deeper into my own theological journey and reckoning with this profound, Father who comes for us. And things like, I searched and searched for God, and then I was found. Or the language of the hound of heaven, constantly chasing me. And I was like, this guy, that's Michael. This hound, he won't stop not showing up. Why does this guy keep showing up at my door asking questions? Keith, what's going on as violence is happening in the community? Help me understand that. Walk me through your hood a little bit. I'll come with you. Get in the car. We'll ride. Why? And the Father's heart is in this man. And to sit here and reflect on it now is just overwhelmingly good. Overwhelmingly good. My son went to Rockbridge with me his senior year. It was like prom weekend. I was like, come on, boy, you got to see this. You got to taste this. Then we got in the car early, went to the prom. He's now in graduate school. So the generational effect. My daughter's a senior at UNC Charlotte, knows the family. We've bonded. They've witnessed the kingdom of God unfold in the life of men who, like you say, a lot of incompetence, a lot of vulnerability, okay with opening up the wounds and saying, this is who I am. And guess what? It is amazingly good. All that God has done. And I will punctuate it by saying, it is nothing like reveling in the fact that God's original gift to us was that we are very good. And so pressing into that when all the world is constantly telling you how bad you are. And we know that. And it's even more terrible thing when it's coming from that domestic place, people who are closest to you. And our hearts breaking open for folks who have not had that kind of revelation. Oh, right, that's 5 minutes. Look at that, as soon as I picked it up. But I just want to say I rejoice in the Lord always and give thanks for this ministry. As Jay said, we hadn't connected in a while, and just to reckon with the glory of God being revealed in our lives. And man, when you taste that, it is really, really good. I'll leave you with what Howard Thurman said, one of the greatest quotes on earth. He said, don't ask the world what it needs. Ask yourself, what makes you come alive? And I'm alive tonight, and I thank you for this celebration of remembrance of what God has done and is doing in Zoweh ministry. Amen.
We hope you enjoyed that excerpt from the Night of Stories 15-year anniversary celebration for Zoweh. You can watch the full live stream of the event on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and search for Zoweh Ministries and think about hitting the subscribe button while you're there. Also, I just want to say thanks so much, listeners, for your love and your support, your words and your messages of encouragement. Without you, Exploring More would not exist. If you've got questions or comments for us, want to send us just a message of encouragement, our email is exploringmore@zoweh.org. And we would ask that you share from your podcast platform of choice. Leave us a review. It helps us to be found. Michael and I will be back in the studio soon, and we look forward to exploring more with you.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes, and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.